All right. Let's get after it. 24 hours until kickoff. Florida State against Georgia Tech this weekend. Feels like forever since football, right? I guess that's what happens after a bye week, right? You don't have football for 2 weeks. Got to relax last week and just watch Miami lose, so that was fun. But yeah, we'll talk about the game tomorrow. Talk about some recruiting visits, some recruiting thoughts. Obviously, a crazy night in recruiting last night. We can touch on that a little bit and talk about that as well. Kind of a crazy, something that nobody expected. Yeah, kind of a crazy happening last night in the recruiting world. Do me a favor, hit the share button, hit the like, the thumbs up if you're here on YouTube. Comment your thoughts here live. We're going to give away tickets to the Georgia Tech game tomorrow during the show, during the spaces, during the YouTube, whatever you call this. To enter to win, all you got to do is go to the YouTube and hit subscribe. So if you're watching here on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. If you're on Twitter, I'll throw a tweet up in the top of the space so that you can go subscribe. Just shoot me. All you have to do is send me a screenshot. If you send me a screenshot of you subscribing, that's all you have to do, and you're entered to win. You can send that to my DMs. You can send that to me on the timeline. Doesn't matter. I'll see it, and we'll honor it, and we'll give away those tickets. Throw a tweet up in the top of the space so that you can see where to go subscribe. Let's get after it. If you want to jump on today, go ahead and hit the request button. I really want to get a lot of you guys' thoughts. Want to know what you're thinking about this Georgia Tech game. Want to talk about any of the recruits that are expected or they're not expected. Obviously, we got the news about Ricks yesterday. Want to know what you guys want to talk about. So I'm all about it. I want this to be you guys' show. We'll certainly get off as many takes as I can. But I want you guys to kind of dominate this. I want you guys to be the ones to talk about what you want to talk about. So do me a favor again, if you haven't already, hit the share button in the bottom right-hand corner. Go subscribe to the YouTube. Send me a screenshot so that we can get somebody a couple of tickets to the Georgia Tech game. I think I've been to 5 of the first 7 games, and I'm just tired. We're going to do like the washed Halloween stuff this weekend. Pumpkin patch, paint pumpkin, like all the things. So no trip up to Tallahassee for me this weekend. Florida State, Georgia Tech, 24-point spread for the game tomorrow. We can talk about that to start. And again, if you have any thoughts, if you have any questions, shoot me a DM or request to speak, and we'll get you in. Florida State is 24 hours from kickoff away from the Georgia Tech matchup. I still don't know exactly what will happen with Jeff Sims. I'd be pretty shocked if he played, but even if he does play, I'd be pretty shocked if he's not significantly limited in the game tomorrow. I don't know. I really feel like this is an opportunity where Florida State plays a really bad team and, unlike Miami, just absolutely takes care of business and really just beats the hell out of Georgia Tech tomorrow. Florida State, in really all sports, has struggled with Georgia Tech over the last several years. They've not done a good job of coming out and just beating teams that they need to beat. And I do think they kind of capitalize on 3 straight losses, the frustrations of being close but no cigar in those losses. Mike Norvell is 8-1 coming off of bye weeks. That one loss was to Pittsburgh in 2020. So the COVID year in which Florida State actually led 17-3 in that game and kind of blew it late. So I think they start well tomorrow. I think they start fast. I did a video breaking down how Mike Norvell teams have performed coming out of bye weeks. Obviously, the Louisville game was coming out of a bye week this year. The UMass was last year. I think the Noles start fast and never really relinquish it. I think Sims will be pretty limited in what he can do. I think that'll just all kind of play into the Noles being able to play better defensively, especially if Fabian's back. I think we'll see a team win and kind of go away. And then hopefully you get some good time for, your backups. Like, you get your starters out of there. You could put Fabian and Jared, who I've heard is still struggling a little bit with his knee. You could put those guys on a play restriction, or you could just get up by. I mean, I honestly would only play Jared on passing downs anyway this game, but I mean, you get those guys on a play restriction, or you just get up by 30 at halftime. They don't have to play the second half against a team that I think is really going to struggle to move the ball. Georgia Tech looks pretty good in a couple of games. As soon as Collins got fired, a lot of that, like, rallying for the interim guy is really, faded, worn off. They're just not a good team. And if they don't have their starting quarterback, I really do think the Noles win, go away big. If I can dig out some rabbit ears, I will try and watch the Miami game on local television if we can try and find that. I know that that's not on TV anywhere. And so kind of unfortunate that won't be something that we can kind of enjoy in watching them struggle. But that'd be kind of a fun one. And then that'll head right into the UF game. So be fun to watch Georgia absolutely demolish them. And so tomorrow should be a pretty good day. Watch the Noles win big, watch Florida lose big, and then have things set up for the rivalry the next week. So, all right, let's get after it. TheGramCode.com, your number one source for Delta 8 products. You guys really need to stock up on the gummies. Cold weather's coming. You need to have – I was told this morning that gummies pair incredibly well with s'mores. So you need to get after the gummies. Hopefully you've been on the green apple and you've tried those. They've got 10 packs available. So get after thegramcode.com. Use TJ20 – I'm sorry, it's a 10-pack of pre-rolls, not gummies. What am I thinking here? Perfect for campfires in the fall. The gummies are just where I'm at. So now that I've totally ruined that, thegramco.com, TJ25. We should do a giveaway. First part, if anybody orders Gramco while we're on here, we'll see if we can get you something a little extra today. Thegramco.com, TJ25. Make sure you hit them up before I ruin anything else here over the next few minutes. I'll give them a better ad read here in a minute since I'm obviously off my game. Jeffrey G. Johnson. What's going on, my man? Jeffrey, can you hear me? I have to boot Jeffrey and bring him right back. Try and request again, Jeffrey. Somebody asked about the white helmets. So I reached out to all right, we're allowed to talk about white helmets, even if that upsets people, even if people don't think we should be able to talk about that on the timeline for whatever reason. We're gonna try and avoid the negativity today. Yeah, I reached out to a couple of people. There definitely are not going to be white jerseys, is what I've been told. So if it's a white helmet situation, it's going to be white on garnet on. We'll see what the pants look like. But definitely traditional garnet jerseys tomorrow is what I've been told. I don't have confirmation one way or the other on the helmets. Saw the Travis J, post. I think that's who posted that. And my guy just didn't know. Hadn't been made aware of that. I really think that when FSU does these, they should hype it up, right? Because they got so much. There was so much positive feedback when they did the Louisville one. That I think you should hype it up over the weekend. You shouldn't just be like, oh, Saturday morning, very cool. This is coming out. So if they don't do it, I think it would be tough to, I don't know. I think it's dumb to just do it and release on Saturday morning. I think you should kind of hype it up because that worked really well for FSU last time. Jeffrey, what's going on?
Hey, what's going on, man?
How are you?
We're doing good. Getting a little bit off subject, with the more into recruiting, you kind of look at the whole landscape, and you see Mike Novell's been there for 3 years, and Mario Cristobal comes in, and you're not gonna lie, he's rolling. I mean, he's getting the 5 stars. It was embarrassing yesterday with the whole Ricks situation. So I'm just really trying to key in on, if we were to go and lose to Florida and Miami, would Mike Novell tenure here be done?
So I think that So I think you have to not look at things in a vacuum, right? Because like what happens in the other 3 games, right? If they win the other 3 and still finish 7-5 and then go win a bowl game, yeah, I mean, I don't think they're getting fired. I don't think he's getting fired at that point. I do think that the Miami game really, really desperately needs to be a win because that's just not a good team. And so I do think it would make Alfred or anybody else pause and say, like, hey, man, like, what's going on here? But if they go out and go 7-5 and upset a Syracuse team, lose close games to your rivals, and then win a bowl, I mean, I don't think he's getting fired at that point. I'm just, now if they lose to Syracuse, then and lose to Miami and lose to Florida, and you go 6-6, that's not very good progress, after winning 5 last year. So, it's hard to say that they would make a move based on those 2 games. But yeah, I mean, I think that if you're losing to Miami and Florida, you're probably also losing to Syracuse. And so then, yeah, at 6-6, I think you're probably having a pretty, that's probably a pretty difficult decision Alfred's got a tough choice to make at that point. And I think, I think Alfred likes Norvell, but I do think that would be what are we doing here if we're losing? I mean, the Miami loss would almost be unacceptable to me, right? Florida, I think is a little different. Like I do think like there's a scenario where Anthony Richardson just kind of goes off and Florida State struggles against running quarterbacks, and you could lose that game, right? But losing to Miami right now, especially if Van Dyke's not playing, which it seems like there's been reports out that he's not. Losing to Miami right now would be pretty unacceptable.
Correct.
So, yeah, I mean, I think in that scenario they go 6-6. I think Alfred's got a pretty difficult decision. And at that point, yeah, the recruiting class probably is starting to fall apart. And, I think that would be pretty detrimental for Norvell if they go 6-6, especially after starting 4-0, right? That means down the stretch, all that goodwill you build up last year with going 5-3 down the stretch, and you basically have done the reverse. You went 2-6 down the stretch. That'd be pretty tough, man.
Okay. Yeah, I mean when you look at the whole landscape, you got the big 3 and Mike Norvell, we can even count the COVID year. He's essentially been there 2 years. Is it that Florida State doesn't have, the NIL money up there to compete with, Florida and Miami? I mean, are we a couple steps back? I mean, what's going on with that whole landscape?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily blame it on NIL. I think it's just kind of a perfect storm. Like, I think that Norvell does, like anything in life, like it's never, to me, it's never all or nothing on anything. Like, I think that there are not just bona fide, like, go get them guys, like recruiters on this staff, right? Like Atkins is one. There's some guys that do okay, but I think that you are lacking when it comes to like just closers and killers in recruiting. I also think that, it's fair to say that, why are guys at Florida and Miami sticking around and why are they recruiting well when their teams stink, and Miami's going to fight for a bowl and Florida's going to fight. I mean, in all likelihood, Florida State has the best record this year out of all, the big 3, and they're probably going to have the worst class. And I think that kind of comes down to the smell of a first-year coach and the excitement around it and the chance for him to kind of build his program. And I think that kind of got robbed from Norvell just due to the COVID year, right? Like, I think that, that's – so, it's a bunch of stuff. I don't necessarily think that NIL is something that Florida State is way behind in. I think the offers that Florida State's able to make are pretty competitive. I mean, you see a kid like, a top 15-ish kid like Hakeem Williams commit, and you've got some pretty good guys that like Keldrick Falk and stuff, and Lucas Simmons and Rod Kearney, who obviously flipped to Florida, but you've got guys that other big programs are after that you've got kind of locked in and coming. I just, I think it's all of those things together, right? Like, are they maybe a half a step behind Florida, Miami, and NIL? I mean, I think, you've got Ruiz, like, just, kind of hate outbidding people right now because of what he's getting trolled on Twitter and stuff.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, are they maybe a half step behind there? I mean, I think they're fairly competitive, but, possibly. And then, you're looking at a coach that's won, I mean, he won 8 games over his first 2 years. And so, like, yeah, it's just a slower grind, a slower build back. I think the COVID year robbed him. I think his staff doesn't have the killers that some of those other staffs have on it. And so when you add all that together, yeah, I mean, they're a little behind just overall.
Yeah, and plus you add, Mike Norvell is not all about, the stars. He's more about the personality that fits into the Florida State tradition, which is really good because you can end up looking like Texas A&M, it's locker room with the whole finesse what they got going on over there too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we'll see. I actually listened to there was I mean, rest in peace this guy, but like there was like a deadly car crash right by my house the other day, and it took me 40 minutes to go 4 miles to get home from dropping my kids off at school. So I never really have time to listen to other pods and stuff, but I did listen to the On the Bench one yesterday, and so I'll give those guys a shout out. But Chris talked about the culture of the locker room when Norvell took over, and this was a great point that I don't think I've heard a lot of people make, but this was a really, really good point by him. In 2020, Florida State had the option to kind of you have 2 directions you can go with a roster, right? And you can either let some of that bad culture kind of naturally weed itself out, or you can literally just say like, hey, we're just chopping like half the roster off. And that's what Florida State did. And it probably was the right decision long-term, just because it let you start fresh and let you kind of build that culture immediately. But you probably sacrificed a few wins by doing that, right? Like you got with some of that bad culture went some good talent. And so it was probably the best decision for the rebuild, but Mike Norvell might be looking at like 3 or 4 more wins overall had that not happened, right? And so it's a catch-22, right? Like, what's the right thing? What's the wrong thing there? But I thought Chris made an excellent point, and I'm probably butchering it at this point. So go listen to the On the Bench from a few days ago, or from yesterday that came out like a day or 2 ago. He kind of went a little bit more in depth to that, and I thought it was really, really good. And Florida State understood that it's the same analogy as like burning off your farmland, right? Like so that you could actually replant good crops. I mean, that's a terrible analogy, but it's what Florida State did, and it cost them some wins in 2020 and probably in 2021 as well. But the roster's in a better place right now, and so it's a rebuild. I mean, it's a long rebuild, and we'll see kind of what happens. I mean, Florida State has the opportunity to get to 8-9 wins this year. If they get to 8-9 wins this year, then they should probably be around that number. Hopefully banging on the door at 9-10 next year. If you win 10 games next year with a soft schedule, I mean, the schedule is not anywhere near as difficult as it is this year. You don't play NC State. Hartman's gone at Wake. You play Duke and Virginia Tech. You get LSU here closer. If you're not knocking on the door at 9-10 wins next year, then I think you are kind of like, are we heading in the right direction? Like if you win 7-8 next year, I think you're kind of like, this probably isn't it. So, but I like it, man. Those are good questions. I see you dropped off, but I appreciate it. That's good conversation, good thoughts. I appreciate it. Let me add John real quick. John, I'm going to bring you in on mute, and I'm going to give a quick shout out to Garnet and Gold. They sent me a message this morning. They've got a lot of NIL stuff out today that's really, really cool. Saw that they just signed Trayshawn Ward. I love what Garnet and Gold does to give back to our student athletes. If you can, do me a favor, support Garnet and Gold. They are the absolute cream of the crop when it comes to FSU merchandise. They are the last family-owned and operated seller of FSU apparel in Tallahassee. Support Garnet and Gold. They do a great job with our student athletes. No matter who you're looking to support, they've got you covered and they'll get you taken care of. They've got stuff for the soccer team. They've got stuff with, again, Trayshawn Ward that I saw was announced. His jersey's over there. They've got the what else they've got? They've got the Big Man, Big Heart stuff. Obviously, the stuff with Fabian and Jordan Travis and all the different ones. We'll give away a $10 Garnet and Gold gift card to the first person that orders anything NIL related at Garnet and Gold today. So garnetandgold.com, spaces 15 will save you 15% at checkout. If you order something from them, shoot me a message, shoot me a DM, and we'll hook you up with a gift card over there. John, what's going on, my man? John Culver, you're on mute.
All right, we good?
You're good to go.
Okay. What's going on, buddy?
Man, just hanging out. I'm ready for game day. It feels like it's been forever. It kind of has.
I know, man. Tell me about it. Hey, man. Look, I just got done going through it with your boy Seymour Stacks over there.
You're fighting the good fight, huh?
Yeah, man. I was trying anyway to get him to understand, because he, of course, he's on this how Mario Cristobal, and because they just got what's his face, Cormani, you know what I mean, and so it's FSU is doing such a bad job, you know what I'm saying, and like I keep saying to him is, I don't care how many 5 and 4 stars you get. If you don't get them to play as a team, it makes no difference, man. And I really wish people would stop worrying about what everybody else is getting, because it doesn't make no difference. And the biggest example is, like Jeff said, look at Texas A&M right now. Jimbo had that number 1 class. 2 times prior to that number 1 class, he still had a top 10 class. So that's 3 years of top 15 classes. And where are they at? Why? Because, yes, he brought in a bunch of talent, but they weren't coexisting. So if they don't coexist, it doesn't matter. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Mario can bring all the talent he wants. And once again, like I said to Seymour Stacks, I do believe just last year in that class that he got when he finally got there, didn't he have 2 5-stars in? One of them was a safety, James, whatever, or whoever, you know what I'm saying? And once again, look at the product on the field. It doesn't matter how many you bring in. You still have to get them to play together. You know what I'm saying? And that was the one thing that, that Bobby did. Yeah, Bobby brought in a ton of talent, but Bobby also got the talent to play together. So it doesn't matter, man. It doesn't matter if you bring in a ton of talent and you never get them to play together. All you did was brought in a bunch of talent. That was it.
Yeah. So somebody's asking me if you're backing up a semi or not in the background there before I get to on answer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at work, bro.
I'll give you a hard time. I appreciate it, John. Now I'm going to answer it. I'm going to put you go on mute real quick just so the semi is not there, but I'm going to answer it. Yeah, I think both sides are important, right? Like, Florida State, at the end of the day, Florida State has to recruit better, right? Like, this top 15 thing is not going to cut it. Top 20 is not going to cut it long term. But you have to win more to recruit better, right? Like, I agree with you. I think that Mario is a great recruiter. He's going to bring in good classes, and the knock against him has always been getting the team to, what's he do with that talent, right? I had somebody in my mentions this morning, like, saying something about like, oh, well, he had Justin Herbert, he was terrible at Oregon, right? Like, he was the most underutilized player that I think I've ever seen a coach, have an impact on it. So, like, yeah, what's he do with the talent? You're exactly right. Like, Jimbo's stacking all this stuff up, but if you can't lead, if you can't get things figured out, then it's not worth anything. That doesn't excuse, but to give credit to the other side of the argument, Norvell has to recruit better. I've said this before, last year, Florida State had the number 20 recruiting class. They were the only recruiting class in the top 20 that didn't make a bowl, right? And so I think relative to the record, they recruited fine, right? They were of all the teams that stunk, they were the best, right? And that's not, certainly not the standard, certainly not where Florida State needs to be long term. But this year, in year 3, they don't get to sell that hype. They don't get to sell the culture and the new coach smell or anything like that. But if they can get to a point this year where they finish 4-1, or somehow they run the table and finish 5-0, and they can get up in that top 15-ish, right? And they're in that 13 to 14 to 15 range of a recruiting class. If they can hit a little bit in the portal like they have the last 2 years, then you bump your win total up to 9-10 the next year, and they should be competing for a top 10 class. It's just a slower grind. It's just a slower build because we didn't really have the opportunity to do that year 1. And so, yeah, at the end of the day, we just have to recruit better, but you got to win to recruit better. And that's what a lot of it is going to come down to. But you're right. I think with the talent composition of the roster, I think Mike's done a good job with this roster, like with where this team is. So can they continue to improve ever so slightly, ever so, going forward? I mean, that's yet to be determined. What do they do these last 5 weeks when the talent they're going up against is significantly worse than what they've seen the last 3? So, John, I appreciate it, my man. Keep fighting the good fight, my man.
All right, you take it easy, T.
Thanks, buddy.
All right.
I gave a shout out to Gramco earlier that I completely butchered, so I threw a tweet up in the top of the space for them. 12 days of Halloween. For every 10-pack of regular Delta 8 pre-rolls you buy, we'll throw in 2 for free. So they're doing some giveaway stuff as well. Been told the pre-rolls pair phenomenally with campfires, s'mores, being outdoors. They were at the tailgate the other day, and everybody was hitting the pre-rolls. In fact, I won't tell that story. But thegramco.com, TJ25. Somebody asked about Rick's. Rick's did cancel his official visit. His unofficial visit for this weekend. I shared some thoughts on that over on the Patreon. I did reach out to a couple people and try and get some insight there, try and chat about that a little bit. I won't go super, super public with that news, but yeah, just an unfortunate situation overall. At this point, the kid's kind of burned you twice. I think you probably stop taking swings there and start to let that go. But hey, this is not like a big. You can kind of read between the lines on what happened there. I don't think it's like super shocking. This isn't a big plug to try and get a bunch of new subscribers, but the Patreon is $3. So if you kind of want the inside of what truly happened there, then pay your $3 and quit being cheap. Joshua, it's AM out there on the West Coast. Do you have a cocktail?
I'm taking a little bit easy this morning. I had a cocktail, but I just had a little microdose of mushrooms, just a little bit, just a little pinch.
Attaboy.
Yeah. Like it's not a big deal when when it's all shredded. You take a little pinch. It's like it just takes the edge off a little bit. Yeah, it helps me focus quite a bit, so I can work, believe it or not. But it actually clinically proven, man. Clinically proven. But yeah, I just had a thought, man. I want to get your opinion. From what I'm seeing, and I don't take Twitter too serious. I know people like to go and vent, make all this shit. I think some of the frustration is that when you see how Florida is struggling and you see Miami struggling and they're still getting these recruits, I think people are just kind of asking a lot of questions based on that. Like, it's our time to pounce because they are struggling so much, which I get. But I keep referring back to the fact that, it might turn out bad, as you might, like someone's already referenced Texas A&M with all these kids getting a lot of money real quick, which I am for them getting money, but the bag matters, man. It really does. And, didn't everybody have McLean crystal ball to Florida, and then he goes to Miami? So it's kind of hard to take serious, even some of the pundits. I guess I'll wrap up by saying I'm just jaded from obviously last year and the last couple of years of recruiting that I really, and even if the kid commits until they sign, I don't put anything behind it.
Yeah, and that's probably smart. But yeah, and I just got a DM that's kind of asking the same question you are here. Yeah, we're Florida is stinking it up. They have the same record as we do, right? And Miami has one less win. So as much as these kids aren't watching these games as closely as we are, right? Like they're not like tuned in to 6 TVs at once and watching the way that Miami looks or the way that Florida. That Florida was able to capitalize on a big win to start the year. Again, we kind of got robbed of that first year excitement, that new coach smell, that come here and we're going to build this together because of COVID. Right. And so, that's truly the answer why. Like, that's why Florida and Miami are not playing well on the field, but they're able to have visitors and they're able to bring people in and they're able to capitalize on that. And we really just weren't. They also have, top to bottom, they have better recruiters, I think, completely than we do on staff. The NIL factor is important, right? Like Florida State has pulled some guys in pulling a 5-star Hakeem Williams. They pulled a 4-star in Keldrick Falk and Lucas Simmons and Blake Nicholson. So like there are positives, right? Like, you see a Cormani McLean go to a rival that is absolutely terrible on the field right now. And you're like, oh my God, it's all falling apart. I mean, that's not necessarily the case, right? Like they are recruiting better than us on the whole. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But the idea that it's just like, oh man, well, we can't compete in NIL, or this is the narrative around, oh man, this is a third year coach, and he's not able to do what a first year coach is the most asinine narrative that I've ever heard. And I understand that it's peddled by the super negative folks in our fan base, but like, yeah, that would be the case if Florida State had won 10 games the last 2 years. But like Florida State sucked the last 2 years and won a total of 8 games. We're probably going to win as many games this year as we've won the first 2 years. So yeah, it's a third year coach, but it's been a third year coach whose team has been awful. And so like, yeah, that narrative just doesn't really hold up. I mean, you've got a lot of promise. I guarantee you this: if Mario and Napier only win 8 games their first 2 years, their recruiting is going to look exactly like ours is right now. And so to me, it's just a little different. It just is, right? Like Florida State fans want a quick fix, right? Like they want Dion in here tomorrow so that we land the number 1 class in their minds. We go 11-1 every single year and win a national title every third year. Like that's their quick fix in their minds. Like that's what's going to happen. And that's just not realistic, right? Like that's just not, and I'm not saying that's you, but that's just not realistic of what's going to happen or what this program is going to look like over the next couple of years. It truly is just a slow fix, right? And we went from 3 wins to 5 to this year. We're probably looking at like the 8 number. And then next year, I think you're looking at the 9-10 number. And if you can continue to do that and you show that progress year over year, you upgrade your staff, you have more support from the booster base and your NIL base. I mean, what happens every time we lose? People say, oh, I'm not listening to podcasts, or, oh, I'm not watching, this, that, and the other. I mean, I can just show you guys the numbers of what the podcast has looked like over the last 4 weeks with us losing. And I know that that's the same. Everybody's quick to donate to Rising Spear or up their booster membership after wins. But when you lose, like that crap just goes down. Like people are just less supportive. So if we get to a point where we're winning 8, 9, 10 games a year, the support's going to go up, the funds are going to go up, the operating capital is going to go up, and it's just a slow grind. What FSU fans want the negative fan base that wants to be negative about everything wants is they want to fix right now in 2022 in October. They want it like turned around immediately. And that's just not realistic, right? Like this team is not going to be competing for ACC championships for another couple years. They're not going to be competing for championships a few years after that. Like it's just a slow build back. And I think what I will say is I think that 90% of the fan base gets that. And 90% of the fan base sees the improvements, though they're subtle, but 10% of the fan base is louder than everybody else, right? Like that to me, that's just what it comes down to.
Well, it's the same thing as Twitter in general, right? 10% of the people on Twitter put out 90% of the content.
For sure.
So if you have a higher negative, so that's the way it goes. But I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm as frustrated the last couple of years as anybody, but I've also recognized the fact that for 30 years of my fandom, I've been so damn spoiled. You know what I mean? With us just being every year, especially, growing up and kid as a high school and in college, every year it was just 10. We're getting 10 wins, we're getting 12 wins, we're getting 13 wins, national championship, whatever it is. Most programs, I mean, people think about Georgia now. Georgia was shit for 20 years. Tennessee has been shit for almost their whole existence. They just, have a good run right now. So we can't just focus on the now and let that kind of build. And I understand frustrations, but, we got to let it see how it plays out. You made a reference real early, and I think that what you're looking for was scorched earth when it comes to like burning your fields. With Mike, that's what he had to do to the roster. He had to scorch the whole scorch earth on the roster, get rid of the people that were just negative or weren't going to work. And that does take time.
Yeah.
And people got to stop referencing other programs too, because, everybody's talking about Mel Tucker last year. Well, now they're pure garbage, right? People are talking about Arkansas last year. They're an average team now, so maybe hitting that good year right away isn't the best way to do it because you're not building for the long term, So, I have high hopes. I really like the direction we're going. I think it was the guys from Sporadics. They do a pretty good job. I like listening to them as well. They mentioned that, this is kind of my point about let's wait until signing day, like actual signing day, because everybody has commitments all over the place. Let's see what they finish with. Because I don't care who you have, if Miami ends up with 4 more losses, let's see how many of those guys they hang on to. I don't care what your bag is. If you want to go to a program that, has everyone talks about facilities. Their facilities are shit. They've always been shit. Their stadium, as we know, is half an hour away. Let's see how that bag really matters when there's, no one there and you guys still suck and no one wants to watch you as well. So let's see what Sunday happens, man.
I appreciate it, Josh.
Hey, you guys have a great weekend. Go Noles forever. Games at 9 a.m. out here on the West Coast, but I'll be watching it, with a coffee and maybe something a little extra in it. And you guys have a great weekend. Be safe. Go Noles forever. Love y'all.
Go Noles, man. You better have something extra in that coffee if you're watching the game. Yeah, I mean, I think that, like I said, we want a quick fix. We want it. We want it all turned around tomorrow. And, that would be awesome. But, there's a lot of comparisons to Bobby Bowden. It is funny. It's like it'd be like a Lakers fan saying like, hey, if we could just get Kobe and Shaq, if we could just get somebody like Kobe and Shaq back in here right now, like we'd be better. Like everything would be fixed. It's like Kobe and Shaq don't just grow on trees, right? Bobby Bowden's don't just grow on trees. I know there are good coaches in college football right now. There are very few that compare to Bobby Bowden. Probably only just one, right? Like in Alabama. I know there are guys that are flashes in the pan, like a Jimbo. But like, come on. We need a Bobby Bowden in here. Yeah, so do 129 other programs in this country. Oh, man. Quick shout out to Renegade Sports Entertainment. My guy, Paul Aloise Jr. is absolutely crushing. He represents Pokey Wilson. They did a signing over at Garnet and Gold. He had a $385,000 settlement on a negligent sexual assault case. Wanted to warn you guys to be safe at hotels, Airbnbs, or wherever you might be traveling to this weekend for the game. Something were to happen, contact an attorney right away, as the owner of the property can certainly be held liable based on the circumstances. Make good decisions this weekend. If you're going to Tallahassee, if you're traveling at all this weekend, call an Uber. It's certainly the preferred way to travel if you are going to be drinking. If you run into any trouble in Tallahassee or anywhere in the state of Florida this weekend, you can call Paul at 772-485-9259. But please do not call him. Just make good decisions. Whether you're out around home or in Tallahassee, wherever you are, please be safe and make good decisions there. Winston Wright, still nothing. I'd be pretty surprised if he was to play tomorrow. Don't believe he's been practicing really, really heavily. Don't think he's been a full participant there. At this point, let's be careful with the way we say things. Yeah, just wouldn't expect it tomorrow. With 4 games left in the season after tomorrow, you could very likely redshirt him based on what happens in a bowl. So I don't know that I'd bring him back. At this point, I also really like the wide receivers. And though I think he'd give an added boost, like Winston Wright's not like who I'm, worried about for the end of this year or anything like that. Like I want to see Verse's. Yeah, I'm much more interested in seeing how Verse plays. Verse would actually be the guy I would sit out tomorrow, just so that knee can continue to heal up. He looks hesitant on it. And then, what does Fabo look like through the last few weeks? I'm not worried about Georgia Tech's rushing game at all. I hate to be like this, but it's kind of like that BC game. Actually, I probably worry less about them than BC because BC at least had Jerkovich and Flowers. But I think that, you get through these next 2 games and then you kind of see what you can do against the run with Syracuse and Florida coming in the next few weeks after these next 2 weeks. So what else you guys got? Hit the DMs, hit the chat. Syracuse will tell a lot about our team. I think we're a much better team. They struggled against a wounded NC State team that we softened up for them. Yeah, I don't know. Syracuse, they struggled against NC State. Shout out Crow. What's up, my man? Struggled against NC State, but they gave Clemson everything they wanted. So, I think we'll find out more about Syracuse tomorrow and next week when they play Notre Dame and Pittsburgh. I think that's 2 really, really physical games that Syracuse will have to play after playing a really, really physical Clemson. And I think that would, you're getting Syracuse at a great time. I really like getting Syracuse after they've played Clemson, Notre Dame, and Pittsburgh in back-to-back weeks. At the end of the day, I mean, you just can't lose to Syracuse. Schrader moves really, really well. I think the game plan for that's going to have to be good to make sure that you have him covered well. But Florida State's face mobile quarterbacks this year a ton in Cunningham and Jaden Daniels and DJ over at Clemson. You're going to have another one at the end of the year in Anthony Richardson. So, yeah, I mean, Schrader, he's athletic. He is really talented. They've got good weapons there. I mean, it's Syracuse, you know. You absolutely have to beat Syracuse. If you offered me, though, right now that as the only loss the rest of the way, I would probably take it. So, for what it's worth. Thoughts on some young linebackers getting time tomorrow, Omar Graham especially. Yeah, I mean, I'm all for that. I mean, I think you need to take care of business and get the win, and then you can get a lot of guys time. You know, I'd love to see Armello the whole second half. I'd love to get Tate Rodemaker and maybe even AJ in for considerable time tomorrow. But I mean, I think you need to go out and beat this team like Vegas is saying you're supposed to, like all the pundits are saying you're supposed to, like the fan base expects to, like Georgia Tech expects you to do. I mean, they know what they're walking in tomorrow. And so, yeah, you need to go out and just dominate the team for the first half and maybe the first drive of the second half. And then you bring in all the young guys. So, yeah, I'd like to see a lot of the young guys get time. I don't necessarily know that you try that early. I think that you try and get your lead up so that you can just play them the whole second half once the game is pretty well out of hand. So, or pretty well in hand, sorry. So, but yeah, I like the idea of getting some of those guys in. With versus injuries, is it likely that he'll still go to the draft? Yes, I think so. I think you have to have something major go wrong for him to not get drafted and get drafted high. He's not fallen on any draft boards. He's not I'd be pretty shocked if anything outside of, and God forbid, a massive injury keeps him from getting drafted and leaving. Like if you have a first round draft grade, you should go. You should go get the bag at this point. It's I mean, obviously it's his decision. He can do whatever he wants, but I mean, Florida State fans shouldn't even want him back if he's ready to go, man. Like, appreciate what you've done for us and go get the bag. If he wants to come back, though, I certainly will support him. Will Jordan Travis come back next year? Yeah, I don't know. I don't think you see him on a lot of. I mean, how many draft boards have you seen Jordan on? You know, I haven't seen a ton. In fact, I haven't seen any the last few weeks. I think there was some chatter after the Noles started 4-0 and we looked really, really good. I mean, certainly play himself into some conversations if we were to go off and go 5-0 here, and he was just able to look spectacular. As of right now, actually, we asked on the panel we did on Sunday. See if I can find the answers on the panel. I'm not seeing it. Does Jordan Travis come back? Newberg said yes. My guy Eshin from the Tallahassee Democrat said yes. Kevin Little from Noles 247 and X's and Noles said yes. And then I don't know who this is. I don't know who. Ben Meyerson from Tomahawk Nation also said yes. I said yes. Richie and Kurt Weiler said no. So on our panel with people who think they're experts, me and Richie, and then actual experts, 5-2 on him coming back. So yeah, I'll give those as my odds, right? He's got a 5 yes, 2 no. I think he probably does. I'd be pretty surprised if he was drafted super high, as a QB. I don't necessarily know that he's in a position to like switch a lot of stuff. So yeah, I think I'd lean Travis coming back next year. And if you do get him back, yeah, I mean, you should win 9 or 10 games. Like there's no doubt about that. Timetable for Trayshawn Ward, I don't necessarily have one. It was good news that he didn't have to get surgery. I think he wants to get back as soon as possible, but I don't have a specific there. Anybody else? Feel free to hit the request button. Otherwise, we will wind down and wrap this thing up and try and get out of here. Hey, did anybody go and order from Garnet and Gold while we were on here? If you go order an NIL release from Garnet and Gold, which I threw up in the top of the space, whether it's the Trayshawn, the Big Man, Big Heart, which I saw Dylan and those folks give away a ton of money to charity, or if it's the Jordan Travis or Fabo or Akeem Den or whatever your situation is there, if you order from Garnet and Gold and shoot me a DM, we'll get you hooked up with a gift card today. Whoa, Richie's going to like this one. Check out this Junkyard Dog shirt from Garnet and Gold, which I I'm having to like scroll back to try and find this because of the way that it shares weird on when we're on Spaces. But I'm a big fan of this Leonard Hamilton shirt. So shout out Garnet and Gold for that. I can't get to it right now, but okay, here we go. That's pretty awesome. Anybody else? All right, I think that's it. Nobody else wants to request. Oh, we didn't talk about this. Okay, let's talk about this and then we'll get out. I don't know if we have any Gators or Canes in here, but shout out to you folks if you are a Gator or Cane and you're sitting here listening to this. But the Cormani McClain commitment yesterday was, to me, I don't know. It's not Travis Hunter, but it's close. And the biggest reason that it's close to the Travis Hunter thing is because I think as the day was going on for Travis Hunter, that's a good question. Aces 352. I'll answer that in just a sec. The reason it's close to the Travis Hunter thing is because like that morning, Travis hadn't talked about like a ceremony. Like there was nothing like coming out, and there was just like kind of a weird silence in that. And I think Florida State fans started to get a little bit worried. And certainly when Travis actually had his ceremony, there was there was an understanding, and people had already kind of broken it. It had already leaked. It had been talked about. I think Bruce Feldman had tweeted like, this is what's expected to happen. And so it's different. The Travis thing is always going to be worse because he was committed to you for so long. But the actual shock, like Gator fans took victory laps for months about this. You had people tweeting that Cormani was always the leader. Shout out my guy Dan, who deleted a tweet about that. They took laps of victory for months and months and months. They all woke up yesterday morning and tweeted Happy Money Day, money being Cormani's nickname. They were like shocked out of their minds. I mean, and they're all blaming NIL, and it's like, oh, Ruiz dropped a last minute bag. And, McClain went on record saying that Miami had been his leader for a couple of months. They'd been his leader. And so, it's a bag at the last second. I mean, may or may not have been, but I have never seen a fan base like I have us last year in December, but it was as close to the Travis Hunter thing as I've ever seen in my life. And couldn't happen to a nicer group of people running victory laps about how this is why we got rid of Mullen, was to get kids like this, and literally waking up, posting money gifts and saying it was money day. Just really the funniest thing ever and then they all just went silent last night. Like you got guys that run recruiting podcasts, like UF specific recruiting podcasts that said like, oh yeah, shout out my guy Justin said, oh yeah, I went to bed early last night. Like nobody went to bed at 7:00 when he was in. Like, shut up. Like, get out. You run a recruiting podcast. You didn't go to bed. I guarantee you'd have woke up if he'd have picked you. So the biggest trolls and the biggest, people that would have been going off had he picked the Gators were absolutely nowhere to be found. And that was a fun time on the timeline last night. I will address this too. A couple of people asked, how can you celebrate when your in-conference rival is the one that picked him up? And easy answers for that. One, when bad things happen to UF, I'm going to celebrate. And when bad things happen to Miami, I'm going to celebrate. It wasn't necessarily that Miami picked him up. It was just the fact that a bad thing happened to UF. And so you should be happy about that. And by the same token, if a bad thing would have happened to Miami, I'd have been happy about that too. I'd laughed my tail off when they lost to Middle Tennessee State and Duke and everything else. So it wasn't necessarily celebrating that. Second, Miami and Cristobal and that stuff, they're not developing anybody like that. Like that's not, it's not like, oh, wow, McClain's like, I worry less about McClain at Miami than I do Florida. Like I think there's some, Corey Raymond, like there's some good talent on that staff. I think that he'd have worried me more at UF. Miami, they're going to waste that talent. I mean, it's Miami. Look what, I think it's a win both ways. UF gets to be miserable, and McClain goes to a lesser threat at Miami than if he was at Florida. And Miami is going to waste that time. He may just end up at Alabama. Like, hopefully he does have a come to Jesus moment, because I really don't wish bad on kids at all. But like, Miami will waste his talent. They're not doing anything with him, which is unfortunate. And hopefully he does go somewhere else, because I don't want that to be the situation. But Miami will waste that talent. Like, there's no way he's not the same player there as he would be at Florida or Alabama, just for what it's worth. So Cormani transferred from a garnet and gold school to an orange school last year. It would be appropriate if he did the same thing in college. Also goes back to a garnet and gold school. Yeah, maybe don't hold your breath super hard on that. Hey, I've heard some things that this transfer portal due to, we talked about Ricks earlier. Yeah, he's not coming this weekend. We put a whole video up on it on the patreon.com/DFNS if you want to go check it out. The transfer portal this year is going to be insane because of the windows and how kids cannot just be transfer portal in and out all year. Mike's cleaned up the first couple of years. I know Newberg talks about it being living paycheck to paycheck, but it has struck the last 2 years. And so I am excited to see what the transfer portal looks like this year. Again, it's like a whole new recruiting season. So it's not just December 21st and then done. Then we get to have this fun, like, all off season. Last question, then we'll get out of here. If the defense maintains or improves, does Adam Fuller stay, or is a change made? So I put out a video about this on YouTube as well. So if you go to YouTube, I asked that panel that we talked about earlier about the defense. And so I won't go as deep into this as we did on that panel. But I think if the defense improves over these last 5 games, then you probably keep Fuller around. I think you probably need to make a tough decision there, because the defense, as far as like basic statistics, they're top 25, right? Like when you look at total yards per game and total points per game and stuff. But when you look at the advanced analytics, the big reason that they're so high is because I think Mike Norvell is sacrificing the offense so that the defense just has less possessions on the field. Florida State's moving slower. We're definitely playing bend, don't break, which makes other teams move slower. Advanced analytics has our defense really far behind what our offense is. The offense actually has improved, where I don't necessarily know if the defense has. I know we think it has, because just overall it looks better. Overall, it seems like, top 25 as far as yards per game. But the defense hasn't been very good. Advanced analytics have the defense at like number 61, whereas the offense is like top 17 right now. So, yeah, it sounds good to be a top 25 defense right now, but I just don't think we are. I think the defense is pretty bad. They've been pretty bad situationally. Teams have gotten out to huge leads in the first half, and the defense has kind of come in and slowed them down in the second half when they are running the ball more. And so I don't know. If the defense improves from there, I think you keep them around. If it stays around that level, Florida State has 4 offensive possessions less a game than Tennessee does because of how fast and up-tempo, how much Tennessee wants to move the ball. Mike wants to move the ball that fast too. I just think he knows that if he gives the defense 4 more possessions a game, teams are going to score anywhere from 12 to 17 points more on us per game, and we're not going to be able to keep up. So that's why I think the offense is intentionally going slow so that Mike can save the defense's butt. But the offense has been incredibly efficient this year. The offense has its problems too. Red zone's not been good. Kicking game's not been good. The offense needs to improve that as well. But as far as just a pure efficiency standpoint, the defense has been pretty bad this year. Okay, sorry, let's back that up. Completely middle of the road. Top 60. You know how many Power 5 teams there are? About that many. So you're either behind a bunch of non-Power 5 or you're at the very bottom of the Power 5, right? By being 61. I would anticipate that number does go up a little bit. You get to play a Georgia Tech team. You get to play a Miami team that's not been very good, may not have their starting quarterback. You may end up getting to you play a Louisiana team that's not very good. So I do think that number will improve, but I think that the defense hasn't been as good as we all think it has. So, anyway, to answer that question long term, I think I'd probably make a change just for what it's worth, right? I like Fuller. He's a good guy. I think most positions on the defense have regressed this year. And we're not recruiting at the level we need to on that side of the ball, and we're certainly not coaching. We can't play zone, right? Like, that's how bad the defense has been. We just got to man up with everybody, and that's why we don't create turnovers. That's why we don't limit possessions for the other team. And you just we need to be better on that side of the ball. Teams just honestly do kind of whatever they want against us in the first half. And then second half, we kind of pull things together. But I think a change may be needed there, and we'll see if it is or not. What's going to be tough is if you go 9-3 and then win a 10th in a bowl game. I don't know if you make, I don't know. Probably depends on who you can get at that point. Shout out Gramco, shout out Garnet and Gold. Oh, let's give away some tickets. Appreciate everybody that entered to win. Everybody that subscribed and sent me a message, you were entered to win. Let's run this thing real quick. Let's see here. David Sanford, Noles _98. Congratulations. 2 tickets to FSU, Georgia Tech. They're my personal seats. Shoot me a DM, shoot me an email at tj@doublefriesnoslaw.com. And we'll make sure you get you the tickets. I think there's you can get my parking pass with it too. So shout out to Noles _98, David Sanford. You win the tickets. I'll be giving away the Louisiana tickets as well. I'm going to Florida, so those won't be a giveaway. But make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube. And when we do these giveaways, all you have to do is reply with the fact that you're subscribed and you're entered to win. So thank you guys for hanging out. Shout out Garnet and Gold. Spaces 15 will save you 15% there. Support our athletes through NIL. Shout out thegramco.com. TJ25 will save you 25%. And my guy Paul over at Renegade Sports Entertainment. Huge win for him this last week. Make sure that you stay safe in Tallahassee this weekend and give him a call if you do run into any trouble. But make good decisions and don't let that be part of your weekend experience. We'll see you guys again soon. Thank you for hanging out. Go Noles. If you're still on YouTube here, do me a favor, hit that like button. That like button is huge for the channel. I see there's like over 50 of you here right now. Hit the like button. That is huge, huge, huge for the channel. Would certainly appreciate it. If you're on the mobile app, you may have to click out and go to the actual app, but hit the thumbs up on this video. Hit the subscribe button. We're here all the time. We'll be right back here live tomorrow after Florida State picks up a win against Georgia Tech. We will also be back on Sunday to talk about the win after we've gotten a chance to rewatch it. So thank you guys for tuning in. Like, thumbs up, and make sure you're subscribed. Thank you guys for hanging out. Go Noles.